Hello, and you are very welcome to this week's episode of Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103. I'm your host, Aisling O'Rourke, and I hope you are safe and well as you tune into the show this week. As always, we have a very interesting lineup for you, but we're going to get straight into it. And have you or are you considering installing solar panels on your home? Well, to talk to us about the process and the nuts and bolts of it all is Odran Casey, and Odran is from Electric Ireland. He is the solar product manager at Electric Ireland. Odran, you are very welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Aisling.
Now, solar panels, I think, they've been around for a long time now, and we see them popping up on rooftops and, solar farms up and down the country. But it is a big investment. It's a physical big piece of work that has to get done. And I think for many people, it can be hard to know where to start because, well, when you do go looking, everyone is trying to sell you something. So what advice do you have for listeners?
Yeah, look, I think what you said there is correct. It is an investment, okay? And I think anybody looking at solar panels for their home, should do their due diligence. I don't think there's a town or village in Ireland where there's a house without solar panels. They're popping up everywhere, as you said. And we find that customers a lot of the time find out about solar panels by just talking to their neighbours, to their friends who have them, and understanding their experience. So what I would recommend is go online, look for reputable companies that you've heard of before. That I would avoid any hard sales, trying to get you to sign on the dotted line before you're comfortable with it. And I would say, just do your research. There's YouTube and across loads of Irish websites, there's a huge amount of information. And go into the process knowing what you're looking for.
So then, where should we start? Okay, so you need to do a bit of research. Like if we take, for instance, an owner of, I'm going to be selfish here, an average semi-D, okay?
Yep, sure.
So, because I recently became an owner of one of those and I'm learning all about these things now. But, it's the average house in Ireland. We're looking to do things more environmentally friendly. Don't necessarily have all that much spare cash to spend. So if you start by doing your research, maybe getting a reputable company involved, asking friends and neighbours for advice, then what?
Okay, so generally what we'd recommend is to get an understanding of your electricity usage. So from your latest bill, or if you have an online account and you can see your previous bills. So have a figure in your head of how much you consume every year. Then when you go to the supplier will talk you through, the high level benefits of solar and what it can do for you. But then when you get down into it, the suppliers will use a software where essentially they can look at your home on a Google Maps type piece of software, and they can place the panels on your roof virtually and to understand how much that's going to generate. And then so you can in real time with the solar company understand, okay, well, if I go for 10 panels, it's going to save me X hundred euro per year. If I increase it to 12 panels, I'm going to save 1,200 euro per year. So, and then you can add in a battery for additional savings as well, and you can understand how that's going to impact on your bill. So the all solar installers have access to this software. So it really brings to life the savings that solar can deliver, not just on an annual basis, but even on a monthly basis.
So just the starting point then is your own electricity bill. I'm guessing if you have a smart meter and you have more information available to you, that's a little bit easier.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you have a smart meter installed, what you can do is you can register for free on ESB Networks and download your consumption or even view it on the ESB Networks portal. So that'll tell you exactly how much you're using every day, week, month, every hour. You can share that with the solar installer if you like, and that'll help them give you a more accurate prediction of how much you're going to save.
Okay, so before you spend any money, you should know how the return on the investment that you should be getting. Absolutely.
And as a rule of thumb, the return on investment or the payback period is anywhere between 5 to 6 years. So it's really, really strong. So I suppose putting money into solar on your roof works a lot harder than, say, money sitting on a deposit in a bank, for example. And also, it's not just that payback period, but it will also increase the value of your home, because as part of the SEAI grant process, you get a BER done, and generally the BER will improve after you install solar. So BERs are now linked quite strongly to property prices. So the stronger the BER, the higher the property price. And another thing that customers often overlook is if you have a BER rating of C1 and you get solar installed and you move into a B rating, that can offer you significant savings by signing up to a lower green mortgage rate. So it really accelerates that payback period.
So you can go to your mortgage provider and say, hi, I'm after doing some home improvements. I now have solar panels. This is my new BER rating. What can you do for me? Absolutely.
Yeah. And they're significantly lower mortgage rates for the green mortgages.
I think you're right there that we do kind of, I suppose, when we do avoid talking and thinking about money in this country as much as possible, and especially switching mortgages around. It all feels very complicated, but actually it's not about switching from one provider to another. It's just even going to them and seeing, can they do you a better deal? Yes, you can shop around, but they might actually be able to do you a better deal if your BER, if you've done the work and the BER has significantly gotten you up into that B rating.
Absolutely, yeah. I did it myself, Aisling, and I was a bit apprehensive because you don't want to play around with your mortgage too much. It's linked to the most expensive asset you'll ever own. And it was very simple. I shared my BER certification with the bank where I had the mortgage, and they processed that. And within about 2 days, I was on that lower mortgage rate. So it was quite simple.
Well, if for anybody who's been through a mortgage, to hear that something affiliated with a mortgage can be done in 2 days, that in itself is worth celebrating, because it's not a speedy process, generally speaking. So then, okay, so you've gotten this grid of the possibilities of savings. I'm guessing the geographical location of the house and where it's facing has an impact.
It does, yeah. So your home will, solar will work very well in Wexford, but it'll also work well in northern Donegal. Okay, so there's not a huge difference as much as we see Ireland. That's the other end of the country. It's actually not a huge difference, and we have many very strong solar systems installed in Donegal. So in terms of the house, so the optimum roof is a south-facing roof, okay? That's throughout the year, that's where you're going to get the highest solar generation from. If you had a house that is east-west facing, that'll also work really well. It'll produce about 80% of what the south-facing roof would do. And that can often work quite well with certain households. So our house, it's busy in the morning, like kids getting up for school, etc., and then the house might be empty during the day, and it'll be busy again in the evening. So as the sun hits the eastern part of your roof is generating while the house is busy, and as it moves around, it might dip a small bit, and then in the evening when it's busy again, it's hitting the west side of the roof, really producing that energy that you can use.
So would it then be, going to be selfish here again for a moment, if one does have an east-west facing roof, are you better off then putting panels on either a side, either on the east and the west? Or because I know a lot of the time and maybe it's because we're not really looking so closely because we're driving past, but we tend to see them on one section of the roof.
Yeah, it's generally for east-west, and look, and again, it depends on how many panels you want to install. So
yeah,
like our most popular is 12 panels. So on an east-west, they would generally be split. So 6 on the front and 6 on the back. Then also there's other things to consider if there's any shading implications, like if there's any large trees, for example, or covering a large portion of your east roof, then you might put more on the west roof.
Okay. So, and I suppose this is the challenge with it, really, isn't it? Because each home is individual. Even in a planned, say, housing estate development, things may have grown over the years that have an impact on it. So it's important then really to get someone out to the house to really take a look and you say to look at it on a map as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You, by all means, have somebody out, and most installers will do a pre-install, a technical survey to make sure that the roof isn't made of asbestos and different elements like that. But even on the software where you have your virtual solar panels on it, and you can see it on the screen with the salesperson, that actually takes into account shading, and it has 3D shading, and so it's very advanced. So that will always pick up that. But yeah, there are going to be things like, skylights. If there's a skylight, you can't put a panel over that, and you need a certain amount of room from the edge of your roof to the first panel, etc. Okay.
And look, we've skirted around it, but we have to ask, like brass tacks, what kind of an investment are people going to have to, save up for to be able to make it?
Yeah, I suppose the good thing right now about buying solar is there's a really strong grant from the SEAI, so the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. That grant is up to €1,800. If you install quite a small system, the grant will reduce alongside that. But generally, about 90% of our customers would get the maximum €1,800 grant. So that's one thing that takes a large portion off the cost, and a number of suppliers, including ourselves, will actually deduct the grant up front for you, so that you don't have to pay the full amount and then wait maybe 6 weeks for the money to be paid back to you by the SAI. So they'll actually deduct it up front. So that's another big consideration. If the budget is tight, that you want to make sure that works for you. How much brass tacks? So an average installation of about 12 panels with a 5 kilowatt hour battery, that's going to cost anywhere, it's probably €7,000 to €7,500 after the grant.
Okay. So it's still a lot of money, but it's not... you're not in the territory of a deposit for a house or a new car here. It's achievable.
Yeah, and I was only speaking to a customer last week in Navan, and he had that 12 panel setup installed in 2023, and he actually shared his information with me so I could look at his savings. And it was quite a busy house. He used about 6,000 kilowatt hours compared to an average of about 4,200. So it was a busy house. But in 2024, he saved over €1,200 in 1 year. So whilst there is an investment up front, the payback is certainly there. And the good thing with solar PV is there's little or no maintenance, and they're guaranteed for 25 years. So they will sit there and continue to save money for years and years.
We are speaking with Odran Casey of Electric Ireland about installing solar panels in our homes. We might take a break here, Odran, because I want to keep talking to you because it is an important issue, and I know that more and more homeowners are considering it. And it is the time of year when we tend to start looking towards the following year and the investments we might make. So we'll be back in a few moments' time after we pay some bills.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by AirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103, and this week I'm joined by Odran Casey of Electric Ireland. Odran's been talking us through the process involved in installing solar panels on our homes. Now, we know from your own data 14% of homeowners have already installed solar panels, or they're in the process of doing it. So it is an increasing change that we're seeing across the landscape. More and more people are benefiting from it. On the logistics side of things, like when you get somebody out to look at the roof, will they be able to, guarantee that the roof can take the weight of panels? Because I know, they weren't necessarily in the pipeline when the house may have been originally built.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So most installers will do a pre-install site visit in terms to check the technical requirements to make sure that the roof is solid, that there's no asbestos, that the measurements all line up, and that the customer is happy if there's any wiring routes, that the customer is happy that where the wiring is going. So yeah, absolutely. The installers will be out before the installation to check the loading capacity of the roof.
Okay, because that is really important, and most homeowners are not experts in roofing, I think it's fair to say. Now, I know you mentioned before the break that a lot of homeowners they'll get the panels installed on the roof, but they'll also have a battery installed. And, we may not as a nation have thought much about that before, but then Storm Éowyn hit, and all of a sudden we're thinking, oh, maybe I need to get one of those for my house, and it really made the whole idea of generating our own electricity really tangible for us. So how does the battery work?
Yeah, so the battery is best, I suppose, explained as the biggest savings you will get from solar is to self-consume it, right? So either when your panels are generating electricity that you're running the tumble dryer, or so you're optimizing that, because if you export it, you'll get paid. Electric Ireland will pay you 19.5 cents for every unit of electricity that's exported, but you might be paying 25 or 30 cents to buy it. So every unit that you can use or store, you're better off. So, for example, if it's a sunny day, your panels are generating, but you're actually not. You're just sitting at home. You might be working from home and your laptop isn't using that much. All that excess electricity is going into your battery. And then as the sun goes down later in the evening, then your battery will start to feed the house. So that's really where the benefits of the battery come in. In terms of a backup power source, yes, they can work as a backup power source. You can install it's an additional cost, a changeover switch. Now, just to be clear, if you're getting a 5 kilowatt hour battery, you will get a day or two max by really looking after your electricity use. So it's not going to run your home for the periods like we saw during the storm.
No, but it might get you through in a pinch.
Absolutely.
And I noticed, and going back to when that particular storm did hit, my TikTok feed was filled with people showing me their changeover switch and how that works. So it did create a whole little niche market on TikTok, I think, for these ideas. is. Like, so obviously, look, we're, the budget's very, very soon. We're only a few hours away from it, really. We're heading into the winter. We're very concerned about the cost of electricity. For most of us, it's one of our biggest bills each month, after the mortgage. So anything we can do to save on that is worth doing. And the fact that it's good for the environment is that wonderful benefit of it too. But I know some people that I've spoken to, Odran, they're nervous of doing it because they've have concerns around safety and maybe fires on their houses. And, I suppose there's maybe a little bit of scaremongering around it, I think, in some quarters.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. There is. People are nervous. We can install our inverter unit and a battery outside now, so that can put customers' minds at ease. But in terms of overall safety and quality of the install, it's when you're doing your due diligence and talking to different installers, it's just good to get a feel for how many systems they've installed. You know from their sales pitch whether they just want to sell. Yeah. And sometimes installs can happen too quickly. And you need to have a proper company that are focused on quality for the installation.
The other question then around this is, because we're talking about this and we're talking about kilowatts and looking at the data from our electricity usage and changeover switches, how tech savvy do you need to be to use a solar panel system in our home?
Not at all, Aisling. If you want, it's a fit and forget. The installation will take generally less than 1 day, and it works in the background. You don't need to have any input into it, so it'll work automatically. So that can be done, absolutely no problem. But what we actually see is customers, once they get it installed, whether they're tech savvy or not, become obsessed with looking. Every solar installation nowadays comes with an app on your phone. Customers become obsessed with looking at it, to see. It's like watching dollar signs roll in, because you are essentially watching the money being saved in real time. And customers can look at their app and see, okay, I'm exporting loads of electricity. I'm going to do the laundry now, so it makes doing the laundry a little bit easier. But look, it's and the apps are very, very simple. It's basically telling you how much it's generating now, and it'll give it in a electricity unit, but it'll also give it in a monetary unit as well.
Okay, fantastic. And then if these panels, once they're installed on the roof, I'm guessing they get connected into the electrical panels, say usually on the side of a house. Is there any internal work required as part of it?
Yeah, so you have the panels installed on the roof, and then they are wired to an inverter. So it's a unit that's about the size of a carry-on suitcase, for example.
Okay.
So it goes into the inverter, and then from the inverter, it goes into your fuse board. So depending on where your fuse board is located, there will be wiring. Now, it's very discreet, and it'll be covered up and done nice and neatly. But yeah, there is internal wiring.
Well, I'm really glad that we got to have this conversation, Odran. For people who want to find out more information, they might be thinking more about it now, and maybe it might, I hope, seem more doable and achievable. Where's the best place to go for more information?
You can go to the SEAI website, so seai.ie, and you can find out all about solar and the grants that are available, or you can go to the Electric Ireland website and to see what offers we have.
Fantastic. And in your experience, when it comes to applying for the grant, are you better off, say, going to the likes of Electric Ireland straight away, or do you need to apply for the grant beforehand?
So I'd recommend talking to your supplier, your installer first, just so that you understand what you're going to get, and that when you commit to it, then you apply for the grant.
Amazing.
So you don't need to apply for the grant straight away, because you need to understand how much solar you're going to put on the roof first.
But you do need to apply for the grant before the work is done, otherwise it won't be covered by the SEAI.
But all installers will advise you on that and make sure you don't miss out there.
Well, Odran Casey of Electric Ireland, thank you very much for joining us on Let's Go Green. I do hope that has helped clarify matters for you if you're thinking about getting a solar panel and you're maybe wondering how big that pot of money needs to be in order to start that journey. I know people who have solar panels, and like Odran says, they're absolutely obsessed with looking at the app on the phone, checking out how much money they're earning in electricity every day. I could say it gets irritating in the staff room, but I'd never comment on anything like that. Odran, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Aisling.
We'll be back after the break.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103, and we are joined once again by Hans Zomer of Global Action Plan Ireland. Hans, you are very welcome back to Let's Go Green.
I always love being on the show. Thanks so much for having me, Aisling.
Now, your latest initiative, and I know you've been working on these projects for a number of years now, but you're doing an initiative around community gardens. But before we get into what you're doing with GAP, what exactly constitutes a community garden?
That's a very good question. There's loads of them, and actually, the government have legislated for community gardens in recent times. In essence, they've asked every local authority in Ireland to develop a policy on allotments and community gardens. So allotments tend to be places where people grow their own food on their own little plot. Community gardens is where people grow food together. And there's different formats of it. The ones that GAP operates have a professional horticulturist in charge. Most community gardens are a bit more loosely organized, where people can just come together and try and grow food or fruit or flowers, whatever it is they like to grow. But it is, in essence, it's about a place, and a community garden, the word says it's a place where people can come together, work together, enjoy working together, and enjoy connecting with nature.
It's a lovely initiative, because I think, like, a lot of people would love the idea of having an allotment to grow fruit and vegetables, but actually it is a big commitment time-wise, and, not everybody has that capacity. So to get involved in a community garden where there's a group of people taking on the responsibility of minding it, it's a little bit more doable, isn't it?
If you're lucky enough to have a garden, you can try and grow some stuff. If you have a balcony, even you can put, a potato plant or a tomato plant or some herbs. But yeah, like you're saying, it is also great to do that together, to learn from each other, and to grow. Actually, there's nothing like harvesting food together and then, sharing it with others. It's a great way to come together. And we're drawing attention to community gardens now because of two significant dates coming up. One is on the 10th of October is World Mental Health Day. And the other one is that the week after is the National Community Gardens and Allotments Week. So we felt it was a good opportunity for us to draw attention to the positives for health and for mental health of being in a community garden. And
it really, it's a huge, socially, but even just that sense of achievement, of having maybe worked the plot and gotten a group of people together, and then to harvest your food and maybe even to have a meal together. There is such a positive impact there, isn't there?
Absolutely. There's a lot of academic evidence that it is good for people to be out in nature, and that it's good for people to be together and work together. If you look at what people can do to try and improve your mental health, all the recommendations are, connect with other people, get active, move your body, be mindful, just get involved in a hobby, and all of those things you can do in a community garden. In many ways, community gardens teach you to take it easy. You know, the plants can't be rushed. You'll have to go at their pace. You enjoy watching, plants grow, and they do that slowly, and it slows you down. But also, there's a lot of evidence from academic research that actually something as basic as sticking your fingers in the dirt is good for your body and your mind. And we tend to forget that, and again, I've been looking at research into mental health, and, our society is increasing pressure on all of us. Life is ever faster. And you can see in the research that people in cities are particularly exposed to bad mental health. And that's because there's so much happening around them. There's always there's so much noise, there's so much action. And then we have our mobile phones calling for our attention, etc. So we are really saying, if you're in an urban setting, try to get out of that rat race and try and do something that quietens the mind. And we are publishing for National Community Gardens Week, we're publishing a few testimonials and statements from the people who volunteer in our community gardens. And if you listen to what they say, they all say, we love coming to the community garden because we like the company, and we like that our brain just calms down a bit. And it's good for our mood, and that's lovely to hear.
And there's been down through the years, I'm thinking about say the men's sheds or the she sheds, and it's this similar idea of getting a group of people in the community together to work towards a common goal. And to have that benefit then, particularly in communities where the cost of living crisis is hitting harder, where actually the cost of food is becoming a real problem for people. The ability to grow your own and to get a meal relatively cheaply, that can't be underestimated either. And even just the ability to get to know people in your community that you mightn't otherwise have the opportunity to know. So if there's people listening to this, Hans, and they're thinking, do you know what, I have a bit of time in my hand, maybe I could go, can I go to the local authority, or where would you start if you wanted to get involved in a community garden?
That's a really good, there is two places I would start. One is the website of Community Gardens Ireland. They have a map and a list of community gardens all over Ireland, so you can find the nearest one to you. But I actually think it's a great idea also to get in touch with your local authority, your local county council, because as I said earlier, the government is asking every local authority to develop a policy on community gardens. That doesn't mean they have to have one, but they have to have a policy about if they want to have one and how they're going to support the ones that are there.
Okay.
So you phoning the county council saying, hey, where's my nearest community garden, actually also encourages them to take that more seriously. There's so many benefits to community gardens. You've mentioned a lot of them. There's also the benefits of in terms of climate. If we eat more local food, if we grow more of our own food, we are avoiding all these, A, we're avoiding pesticides, and B, we're avoiding all these food miles. So really, there's no downsides to community gardens, and it's not for everybody, but if you're interested in it, check out the Community Gardens Ireland website or contact your local authority.
Last week, I had the pleasure of attending the Climate Cocktail Club in Ballintubbert Garden and House, where Mick Kenny of Grow It Yourself was speaking. And we talk about food waste here on the show all the time, but he said something at it that really struck a chord with me, that the food that is prepared and processed and produced around the world but isn't eaten, so that food that is produced but goes to waste, has as big a climate, a carbon footprint as the aviation sector. So the idea that you could get involved to generate food for your household, you're in your local community, and reduce that, like it sounds small, but actually will have some tangible benefits in your physical and your mental health, but also the health of your community as well. And like Hans says, like frequently on social media, like I'll see people giving out about potholes or, maybe traffic lights being out of sync or whatever it might be, the latest complaint. But actually, it's all very well and good having a rant on social media. And look, it gets off some steam. I'm not judging anybody. But unless you actually pick up the phone and ask the council what they're going to do about something, lodge that complaint, or have you started a community garden, it's not going to spur on action.
Yeah. Listen, I love quoting Michael Kelly as well. One of the other things that he says is food is a doorway. And I fully agree with that, because when you start growing your own food or growing food with other people, you can't help but talk about it. And you also are understanding how precious food is. So you actually, if you've grown it yourself, you're not going to let it go to waste. You're going to really savor it. So it's a way of contributing to a reduction of the food waste that you mentioned. It's a great way of learning more about where our food comes from and why it's not a great idea to be eating strawberries in the middle of winter. So you become in tune with the seasons also. You become in tune with other people. And you get the conversation starting. And that is really, for me, is so important about all of this stuff. There is, to rediscover the communality. One of the things that I noticed when we're talking to people is that more people are saying that they don't actually sit down as a family to have their dinner.
Yeah.
And I found that's a really sad thing. I've always grown up with that. We were, in my family, we were all running around, but there was one time of the day that we would all sit down and talk to each other. And that's the evening meal. And I think that's, if we can bring that back as well, again, it's about being mindful. It's about treating your food with respect. Don't hoof it in and while you're running around, doing something else. Actually take the time to enjoy the food, slow down. Your Instagram scroll can wait. Just relax and enjoy life and enjoy good food and enjoy good company.
And it's still something that, like, when I'm with my family, we absolutely will sit down to have, lunch or dinner together, and have that conversation and that opportunity to catch up on our days. And is everything all right? Or is there anything bothering you? Like, it's a very easy way to have that conversation and that check-in, because I think a lot of people and a lot of families can feel very disconnected in our busy, noisy world. And it's also, we should say, Hans, an opportunity to get children involved in learning about where food comes from. Because youngsters need to know that, a carrot can be pulled from the ground and eaten straight away. It doesn't have to come in a plastic bag, or that, that beautiful flower. Well, you sowed the bulb in October and now in the springtime you see it blooming. That there's a natural life cycle to things, and getting them involved in a community garden initiative, as a volunteering initiative, or, it's a great education piece for kids as well.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself, Aisling. And that's why GAP Ireland, certainly, we operate these community gardens in urban areas, because that's where the need is greatest. In lots of urban areas, if you ask kids where the food comes from, the answer is, the supermarket. And we're trying to say, no, actually, come and discover that for yourself. And we're based in Ballymun. It's really lovely. There's 6 schools in the Ballymun area. All 6 of them have their own little polytunnel. They're all bringing, one of them even has chickens and bees. So they are showing, on a daily basis, and they're involving the students in caring for the animals, caring for the plants. So, it's a wonderful thing. It's something that will stay with you for life.
Absolutely. And again, yeah, exactly. It's a life skill. These kids need to know how food is prepared so that they can then do it for somebody else as they grow older, and maybe take some of the pressure off busy mums and dads when they get a little bit older, and do it for you instead of you having to always do it as well. I know the minute I was safely able to use the hob, it was absolutely firmly my job in our house, and I loved it too, and I still do today. So that, you know, it's a really good point, Hans. If people want to find out more about like the work that GAP does, but the community gardens that you're involved in as well, where's the best place for people to go?
We have a website called globalactionplan.ie, and we're on most social media channels except Twitter, and we're on at GAP Ireland. So do follow us there. We're about to start a new program in Monaghan, where we're going to be supporting a whole bunch of community gardens all over the county. And we're also beginning a program in Cavan and Fermanagh later this month, where we're going to be helping people develop, you know, climate leadership skills. So all of that information is on the website, globalactionplan.ie. And, you know, don't be shy. We'll tell you if we can't help you, but what we can certainly do is also point you in directions of other people who can.
And Hans is an absolute font of information on all of this effort, so I'm sure he will point you in the right direction. Hans, thank you so much for joining us on Let's Go Green once again.
Thanks very much.
We'll be back after the break.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103, and I do hope you enjoyed our conversations this week. I know we spoke about solar panels and the nuts and bolts really of what it involves in getting a solar panel erected on the roof of your home. And we also looked ahead to Community Garden Week, and it is worth your time Googling your nearest community garden, because you might not have, you know, the capacity to start growing your own food at home, but perhaps there's an option for you in your neighbourhood that you were previously unaware of. Well, before I leave you this week, I wanted to pay tribute to Manchán Magan. Manchán passed away sadly at the age of 55 from cancer, which had begun as prostate cancer, but unfortunately had spread throughout his body there on Friday. In 2013, when I was a member of staff at Midlands 103, I was invited into Manchán's home near Collinstown in County Westmeath. At the time, I was presenting a programme called Life and Times. I didn't know what to expect when I met him. I had heard of this man. He was, as my dad would have said, a little bit out there, I think, at the time. And he had been around doing travel programmes, but little were we to know at that stage the phenomenal powerhouse of a man Manchán would become, and the impact that he would have on our thinking around both the natural landscape and our graw for our native tongue. I want to leave you tonight with my conversation with Manchán, and here he's speaking about his optimism for the future of Gaeilge at the time. And of course, if we listen to what he says, remembering that this was an interview conducted in 2013 and all that has happened since, and well-known artistic groups that have taken our Irish language and brought it to new heights, he really was a man before his time.
So, I mean, I would have been depressed about the future of the language until the boom. So the language was always connected with poverty, and it made absolute sense. And you know the way we now blame the English government, the English national schools system for wiping out Irish, and we say there was this thing, the bota scur. Do you know? So in national schools in the 19th century, everyone had to have a stick around their neck, and if they were speaking a word of Irish, there was a mark put on the stick, and then they were beaten at the end of the day for how many words of Irish they spoke. And that happened all over the Midlands and all over Ireland, and we blame the English for that. But if you look through the history records, it was actually the Irish who told the teachers, do not allow our children to speak Irish. It was clear to us. We saw the language of advancement was English. And we were so poor, you know. A parent would be doing their child a disservice if they taught them Irish. They needed to get this new language into their skulls. And they insisted, many generations of Irish speakers, parents insisted their children learnt only English. So that was, the connection between Irish language and poverty is so strong and so understandable, because it's our parents, definitely our grandparents, lived in that. They faced poverty. They faced bad years. All of our families, no matter what background, they faced bad years. So the language was connected with that and would always be until we had a boom. And those years of boom, it might have been short, and we might regret the lack of it now, but even those 10 years of boom transfixed everything about the Irish, the way they see themselves. And one thing happened, the way they see their language. And a great example of that is the amount of Irish language names. Like we're in the Midlands. There's never been Irish language in the Midlands. This is the one dark area where you don't have it. I'm down at the Cut, which is the swimming area beside me in Loch Lane here in near Collinstown. And in the summer, all you're hearing is, look, Una's there, there's Aisling, there's, Siobhan, there's Suracha and Odran and Rian and Riel and Ev, all of these ancient Irish names that had been dead for 1,000 years. Actually, or for 1,500 years, because they're going right back to the old myths. Now, what the hell's that coming from? Do you know? That is the first step in a new understanding of our level of Irishness. And when you now talk to Leaving Cert students, the A and B and sort of C+ Leaving Cert students who are coming out, they have fluent Irish. Fluent, because of this emphasis on spoken Irish. So if I go into any senior school, to any sixth-year school, 6th-year class, and talk to the Honours Irish, they all have fluent Irish. And the Pass Irish, the A and B Pass Irish, have good enough Irish too. Now, they all go off on their gap year, interrailing or whatever, and they speak Irish on the train or abroad on the holiday in the Costa del Sol.
Is that because we as a nation love gossiping, and when we're abroad, all of a sudden, everybody, particularly if you're interrailing, you're on the continent and everybody speaks English, you retreat to the Irish and they haven't a notion what you're talking about, but they know you're Irish and not British as well, so it's a way of identifying yourself.
Exactly. So it's a point of pride, and it's a gimmick, and it's a game, and they feel good about it and they feel proud about it, and it's the first time where it becomes useful and it makes sense, because they think, okay, where does it actually fall? What is it? You don't need to think so much about identity when you're in Ireland, and the minute you step abroad, and every emigrant who's ever arrived in London or in New York understands that, immediately you begin to think to yourself of what St. Patrick's Day means, or what St. Patrick means, and what the language means. So those students will all do that, and they will do that for the first 2-3 years in college. They will all have good enough Irish, and after that there is nowhere for them to speak it, and then it's as dead as a dodo again. But that's okay. That has never happened. Now we have all of these Irish language names and all these people going to Gaelscoil, and we have people coming out and Leaving Cert with Irish. The next step is we need to find interesting venues for them to go to. Now, that's not for us to do. They'll do that. You and I have no concept of their attitude and their outlook on the world and their outlook to Irish. So people like Keela and Liam O'Wanley of the Hottest Flowers are still figureheads of the Irish language. They are snaggle-toothed old people. They're part of the ancient regime. Now, they are only too happy to be supplanted if someone new comes along. Just no one new has come yet. But clearly the language is now in the hands of those kids. And what we need, and what we will definitely get, is the new young rock bands, the new young movie writers with Irish who are talking to themselves, who are using the new language that they have, like Codever for whatever, or Darieriously for serious, which is a perfect mix of Darira and seriously. And they're going to take that language to an entirely new level. And yes, will the grammar be utterly all over the shop, and might the genitive case die? Definitely, but that's what always happens with living languages. They meld and they morph and have whole new futures. This is the first generation who have been reared on SpongeBob SquarePants and Scooby-Doo Oscuelga. And we have no idea what happens in your brain if that happens to you.
And that was a part of my conversation with Manchán Magan in 2013. Arieste Gorev a Anam Dealish. That's Let's Go Green for this week here on Midlands 103. We'll be back same time next week with another episode of the show. But for now, stay safe.